We're recording, yes. Okay.
All right, so we are now recording. So last meeting, we talked about where we were at revenue-wise, some of the shortfalls, some of the surpluses we were looking at, and dove into the divisions. We're now going to put numbers on paper. We've shared that with you, and we're going to dive deeper into this and really show you what does that mean dollar-wise in each of our COSERs in our divisions. So we'll take a deep dive to where we're at, really, because this will tell you where's our starting point as we build our budget for next year. But most importantly, where are we at this year for the rest of this year's budgets and some things we're looking at and keeping a close eye on. So jumping to number 2 on our agenda is the budget process timeline. Just want to reiterate and review, our next meeting is January 26th. That meeting will be a review of the budgets. So we will have budgets developed. There'll be draft budgets. We'll present them to the committee, and we'll go over what our proposal to the committee is. And then from there, we make some tweaks, adjustments, and on February 10th is when we will work to have a final budget presented to the board. And then from February 10th meeting, we'll ask the board to approve that budget, or the budgets, I should say, and then we bring it to the CSOs on the 12th to give them the presentation of the budgets. And then it goes to the component districts after that, with the component district vote on our admin budget on April 22nd. That's a little review of the timeline. Now moving to number.
So Mr. Bell, before we go forward, just to touch base for a second, and for our Zero and Mrs. Saunders, and for our board members, and a reminder for our cabinet team, the state has, if you recall, back at the start of the pandemic when they approved the budget, there were 3 look-back periods for the state and the governor. The reason why I'm weighing in is that it may have an impact down the road on our component districts' budgets and ergo our budget. Just making the acknowledgement, if you remember, the first look-back period was April 1st, April 30th. The second was May 1st to June 30th. And then the third was July 1st to December 3rd, to the end of December. So at this point, the governor is, and the division of budget is still with their fingers crossed that there's going to be stimulus monies. And I just want to acknowledge that that's an issue out there. I referenced that in the transmittal this past weekend, that both David Little, Rural Schools, and also Bob Schneider as the executive director for NISPA, were both referencing the fact that they believe the governor is playing chicken with the feds. And David Little said it best, and he said, the kids in schools are in the middle. So if there is that significant reduction, or if there is a potential reduction, that could be devastating for this year or potentially for next year. So we are I think our schools are counting on, they did make some reductions. Many of our school districts already made some cutbacks, and they already tightened their belts. I think Beekmantown cut several $million. I know Crown Point did, Osable cut back. I mean, a lot of our school districts already tightened their belts some, but they're tied to state aid. And I just want to acknowledge that, yes, this is our timeline, but our timeline and the school districts need to generally have their budget in place by the middle of April. So they're going to have a direct impact on our process too. And I know Mrs. Myers has been through it in the past. Back in 08, 09, Terry, you were here as well. Mr. Friedman, you were in the schools then as well, and Mr. Slattery. So we've all kind of lived through it a little with the GEA. And it did take, and David Little said it best, it took us 10 years to recover from that. So I just want to acknowledge that as we're looking at this, these timelines, this is our timeline for our BOCES, but we're also going to be eventually impacted by the status of our component districts and whether they can afford services or not. So I just want to lay it out there as an overlay, and it doesn't affect what we're doing on whatever date, but it may have some impact on the ability of our districts to be able to support our services. I just want to acknowledge it. And Mr. Bell, I don't know if you want to weigh in, or there's anything else you want to add. I know you're tied in with ASBO, which is the Association of School Business Officials. Mrs. Myers, you're tied in with your state, treasurers and the same conversation. So people are just being very cautious, and there's some fear behind that caution, because if that money doesn't happen, especially with stimulus monies, it's going to be very challenging for all of us. So Mr. Bell, I know that's more of the budget factors, but just in terms of our timeline, I mean, if it depends on where the governor and the state lands, which will have some impact on potentially our district's responses, but we still need to lay out our budget just in case, no matter what the options are. So
yeah, I think great points, Dr. Davey, and it's the big piece of it is making sure that we have budgets that are fiscally responsible for our districts. We've seen that in tough financial times, they've still leaned on us. As you will see during our budget recons coming up, is that our numbers are still very strong through our divisions. So we have not seen a significant decline in services provided due to the needs of our districts, the quality of services we're providing, and the reasonable pricing that we're providing the services for. So keeping that in mind as we set our budgets, like Dr. Dave is saying, there could be some very, very challenging fiscal times ahead, depending upon state and federal action that will determine our district's needs. And it could be more BOCES services in some areas, and we could see significantly less usage in others based on districts' prioritization of their needs. Yes, that's very well said, Dr.
Okay, and thank you. And I think, we'll have our fingers crossed that there is going to be, stimulus monies to support and then a rapid recovery following that. But we just want to acknowledge that that's going to be impactful on our budget timeline. And I apologize, my camera wasn't working on my laptop, so I rebooted, but I will be participating verbally here in the big picture, but I also like to be able to see the individual shots too of the Hollywood squares, so to speak.
Excellent.
So thank you.
So at this point in time, I'm going to share screen. So you'll lose us visually for a bit, but what I'll be doing is scrolling through the packet. So we've made a packet for anybody in person, but also online. And I'll scroll through. I'll try not to make you dizzy, but going through the agenda items. The next item up is our meeting highlights from last meeting. So I'll open up to any questions from Ms. Giro, Ms. Saunders on those highlights. Again, a lot of the information was covering our revenue portion of our budget and those budget factors that we'll be really diving into even more this week, or today, I should say. These highlights will be moved forward from this meeting to the full board and shared with them as well.
I thought everyone did a really good job. It was easily understandable.
Excellent.
And that's from a dyslexic.
Okay. So moving on to our next agenda item, we will have the review of our budget reconciliation. So now we're going to dive into each of our divisions and each of our budgets. And what I am going to do for the people on the screen is try to zoom in here the best I can without losing it. All right. So if you'd like me to zoom in more, I'm happy to do so. The rest of us do have packets in front of us. So I want to explain here a little bit of what you're looking at and then discuss a little bit of it. I'll give Director Slatter an opportunity to provide any additional information, and then I'm happy to answer questions from anyone on the committee. So first, as I go through these budgets, I'll be doing a lot of the talking, but as I always say before, I'm just the messenger in this. I'm part of the process, part of a greater team under Dr. Davies' leadership. And each and every division works closely with an accountant, as well as Christine Myers, our treasurer, to do these reconciliations, monitor our financial spending. So this is really a large team effort. So I'm doing the speaking. I have the pleasure and joy of being part of that team and presenting the information. But realize that it's not a me thing. This is a team item. So let's jump into the special education division and some of the coasters here that we're sharing with you. Across the top, you see the 205, 208, 210, 220 numbers. Those are our classroom COSERs, and it breaks down showing some miscellaneous revenue and expenditures happening. We highlight the potential surplus and deficit. That's where we're going to spend a lot of our time discussing. That is just the difference between what we're charging districts and what our expenditures are and we are projecting. And then down below that, we do break down enrollment to show you where we budgeted and what the current FTE enrollment is. And those are the numbers carrying over from last meeting, what we really talked about then, and showing the difference. So you may recall some of those numbers that you've heard. And this now will show you what that dollar amount impact is. Right below there, we do put the tuition as a reminder of it's a significant impact, a change in just one student when we're talking 41,000 to 82,500. So you can see that there. Similar below our 300 COSER all the way up to the 550 COSER. That's itinerant, ITIN is itinerant services for the first batch. And then when you go in for the 300s, and when you go to the 400, that's our hospital-based program. We provide the districts on an as-needed basis with a part-time staff member at the hospital currently. And then we have our committee on preschool committee for our CP SE. CP is P, I'm missing a letter there. But we work with our districts for preschool. CPSE, did I have it right? There we go. So we work with our districts on that. So those are breakdown of our COSERs. Let's dive into the 200s where we spent a lot of time discussing last meeting. And I'll reiterate some points to say our enrollment 205 is where we had that loss of 5 students, just over 5 students. That has driven a deficit at this point in time for us of $190,000. In the 208, our academic behavior classrooms, we have a loss of almost 13 students, causing a deficit of $200,000. Also, we talked about our number of classes in each one of these. The academic behavior, we did reduce 1 class, but that was the total we could reduce based on enrollment being spread out by the different age groups. So there was a reduction in the class there, but we could only reduce 1. And then in 210, we did have a growth of 4.375. It is in red, but that is actually a growth of students in life skill program. And we did end up having to add a class in our life skills program to accommodate the enrollment there. 220 is just 1 class, and we are at 5 students. We did discuss that we are working on intake of a student. We are still in process of intaking a student there. So realize that deficit of 32,000, we're anticipating will be gone as we progress through this year. That adding 1 student will equal a prorated portion of the $82,500 tuition. So that gives us a net, as we added them across, of a deficit of $524,000. I'm not going to touch too much information on our itinerants in the committee, other than to say there are other 300s and 441 and 550 are tracking very, very well. We're looking good at this time. We have a net surplus across all of those of $137,000. Gives us a net of all COSERs in special education of $387,000 loss at this time projected. Now I want to jump into some of these numbers and give you some more information that's not on your sheet that I think is important. AIDS is a big item. We talk about AIDS a lot here at CBS. We do have a large number of them typically. Last year we had 85 AIDS. This year we actually have 64. Again, it changes by the day. We have 6 vacancies. Dr. Davies is going to recommend to the board hiring a couple of aides at our meeting coming up next week to fill some of those vacancies. But we're down to 64 aides in this projections with some vacancies. We do drive a strong revenue from our aides, actually. So we charge about $37,000 for our aides per one. And if you think about it, if they have family health insurance, you're looking at a cost of over $50,000 for that aide. If they have single, you're looking at $30,000 single health insurance. And if they have no health insurance at all, you're looking more around $22,000 for that aide. So we've been very fortunate. The aides that we have hired have actually not picked up family health insurance. So that has benefited us to show a surplus every time we have an aide. Why do I bring that up? I bring it up because last year in 2019-20, our surplus in special education for aides was $630,000. All that money flowed back to districts. All that money flowed into our special education COSERs and helped to support a surplus. At this time last year, I sat here and we told the budget committee that we had a special education deficit, overall deficit of over $53,000. Granted, we're presenting to you today over $387,000, but then it was $53,000. We ended the year. We had some benefits of a pandemic and incurring significant savings there. We made some different moves to spruce up the savings, but we ended the year at a $1 million surplus, just over $1 million. So we did have a significant swing from the presentation today to the end of the year. Are we expecting a $1 million swing this year? We are not. We are hopeful that we stay open all year long. We don't know what the pandemic is going to bring. There are so many variables in this. The uncertainty of this pandemic makes it almost impossible to predict the future. But what it does help us to predict is that we have to monitor this very closely on a regular basis. And whatever the pandemic brings to us, whether it's decreased enrollment, increased enrollment, or closure, we need to be acting swiftly and wisely and fiscally prudent, because we know we don't really have wiggle room here in this budget. We are at a point in time that we do have a vacant teacher that hasn't been filled yet in Mineville. We have that teacher who is working 2 classrooms and is assigned to 2 classrooms in Mineville for cost savings right now. But if our enrollment does change where we get 1 or 2 students, we will be filling that teacher's spot. But that is one action we are currently taking now to incur current savings, immediate savings. So also, Director Slattery is monitoring caseloads very closely because all of our related services flow into the 200 COSERs. So OT, PT, speech, counselors, and so on and so forth, all flow into these 200 budgets. And the more those can be billed out to districts for services that are needed and provided, the less it gets charged off to the 200 budgets. So Director Slattery is monitoring those closely, managing schedules, working with the CSE chairs, and trying to provide services where we have availability to do so. So great work there, Director Slattery. The last thing I'll say on this, and I will open up to Dr. Davey and Director Slattery if they have anything else to add. We're talking about a $13.5 million budget, about 14 million, between 13.5 and 14 million. So our deficit at this point is approximately 2.8%. So a large number, yes, smaller percent, and it's one where we have strategies that we can make that deficit up over a period of time as we flow into really the January to June point. So we're at a cautious state right now. We're not at a one that we're overly, the sky's falling, or a highly concerned state. What raises the flags is the pandemic and monitoring what that brings to us. So I'll open up to Dr. Davey, Director Slattery, if they have anything else they'd like to add on to special education.
Sure. And Mr. Bell, when you presented those numbers about last year, again, last year we had a deficit at this time, but it was less than 100,000, about half about that. Mm-hmm. And the aides, for example, you said we ended the year with over a $600,000 surplus. Mm-hmm. And that is, and the money, and we don't hang on to that money, as you mentioned. We actually give it back to all the districts. So they get it back, but it helps us make sure we can balance our books. Given that and where we are, we've got less aides this year. They've got a few more to fill, but that means if instead of having 85 aides, we had approximately 65, that's 20 less, which is almost a third of, or 25% of those numbers. So if we were to have a similar reduction in that 600,000, you'd be looking at like a 400,000, right? 425. So already that deficit, that potential surplus is shrinking. So I know, Mr. Slattery, you can talk a little bit about some of the new students that are coming our direction as well. So we're hopeful, and we do know that, it's not as bad as it's been, but it does still make us a little bit nervous. And Mrs. Gero, years ago, Mrs. Saunders will remember, there was at one point in this meeting, we were $1 million in the hole, potentially. I don't know if you recall that. The year before, it was CB Tech that was like 600,000 in the hole. So, honestly, there are fluctuations year by year, but this year is a little bit higher than what we would like to see. But it's also something that there is some plan for what will happen as we go forward. So, Mr. Slatter, you can just weigh in about kind of some of the numbers that we're talking about too, and then see if there's any questions.
As he unmutes, I just want to say, we did budget conservatively for our aides, Dr. David. Great point that you brought up. In this analysis, you see a $50,000 surplus budget for aides. So if we do have more aides that come on, and we have that, again, advantageous choice of health insurance, I guess we like to call it, through the rest of the year, we could see similar surpluses that rise more from $50,000 surplus to, like Mark said, the $400,000 surplus mark. Again, if we stay open, provide services, and so on and so forth. So with that now, Mr. Slatter, I'm sure you are unmuted.
Can you guys hear me okay? I was having some technical difficulties at the beginning.
You sound great.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. So yeah, Mr. Bell, you really nailed it on the head. And I will say, historically, when we look at our enrollment over the past couple of years, we typically pick up anywhere from 5 to 10 students at this time of year. We're in historic times with a pandemic, but we are seeing an increase in enrollment. So I do anticipate, picking up 5 to 6 students in December. We may also have some students, 1 or 2, leaving our program and going back to district, which is in those students' best interest. So that's something that we really believe in, at least restrictive environment, and we want the best for our students that we service. And at one point, I'm not sure if you made because of my sound, but I will say from our last recon, so from October to November, we did reduce that deficit, I think approximately 26%. So I'm pleased with that trend line, and hopefully we can reduce it even more next month when the recon.
Any questions from our committee members?
This budget has all the equipment we need for all of our children, and we're up to date.
So could I just weigh in, and in the board packet this past weekend, I included the digital equity survey. So if you haven't had it, that was one of the links. Okay. And basically, we were talking about it today about the number of students and staff that we have. And Alex, who's not on now, had indicated to me when we were submitting that survey, and I called, Terry had helped with it. We gathered all the data, our directors had input. So all of our students, according to Alex, and I confirmed with him verbally as well, all of our students at this time have devices, that are either provided by their districts or provided by CVES. Okay. And those who don't have internet, Terry, I believe we picked up about 80 Kajits, which are like Wi-Fi hotspots. Okay. So we do have the opportunity, if we do wind up with a remote, or we have those students who are remote, that Alex has confirmed that every student should have access to a device so they can use it.
Because that was the only thing I heard last time, is there was a couple that I couldn't confirm if it was because the kid wasn't using it, didn't know how to use it, or the parent didn't insist on the use of it. So I just thought I'd ask the question. Okay.
And if that survey wasn't in there, I thought I included it, but if not, it'll be in this packet.
We got in a hole with equipment one time, really bad. It's like I'll be asking Michelle, she got everything she needs. That's my job.
Great question. And moving to the next page of your packet or on the screen is just for a sample so you can see where we were. Again, the 2021 is everything we just covered. If you look at 1920, for example, there is significant fluctuations in our special education. I say significant, in my opinion, is once you put dollars to it. So from October analysis or October numbers to June, we had a 4.57 student positive swing. That equated to over $300,000 in 1920 because of the tuition changes. So again, monitoring enrollment is extremely important, and this is something that we do track to try to track trends, but consistently monitor enrollment through both divisions, CV Tech and Special Ed. So speaking of CV Tech, the next item in your packet is on paper what it looks like of everything we discussed last week. So again, we want to reiterate everything that we mentioned to you last week, show it to you on paper, throw some what the tuition amount is now on each one of those changes. And as I go down, we put a summary together for you, and I'll zoom in for our online users. So the items we talked about last time were the adult enrollment and daytime programming, the job target students below budget, and then also our New Vision applied engineering enrollment that was reduced, plus we reduced the tuition there. So we had the shortfall. What does that equate to? That equates to a shortfall of just under $400,000 or $388,800 in revenue. So that is the revenue impact. So as we were working through the beginning part of this year, there had to be some changes to staffing in order to accommodate for that loss in revenue. And we had adjustments to our budget of $350,000 or just over that for staffing changes and benefit changes. And then we also had cuts in expenditures this year, and in particular conference and travel with the pandemic. That was an easy place to take out of the budget without impacting the education of our students. So reducing those budgets by $85,000, we were able to make up over $430,000 to reduce our expenditure side of our budget to accommodate for that loss in revenue. So again, it comes from cutting classes, not filling classes, using instructors both in Plattsburgh and Mineville. This is year 2 we've had that, where we have instructors traveling between campuses. Again, Director Freeman and team working with what they have, with the budgets that they have, and making the best of the situation to provide high quality educators for students. I also attribute some of this to the enrollment averaging. So our planning process starts here with budget committee. We know what our enrollment average is going to be really starting after February 10th. February 11th, Director Freeman's going to know, Dr. Davey and team are going to know exactly what that revenue is coming in for our CV Tech budget. So as we jump to the next page and start to look at our COSERs, the charges to districts, minus the items we just talked about, the job target, the adults and daytime programming, and those are smaller parts of our budget. The biggest piece is enrollment averaging. So Director Freeman and team and our financial team know February 11th, what are we looking at for revenue, the biggest chunk of our revenue, and we start planning that. We start to make moves then. Then it's analyzing enrollment. Where's our enrollment trends at? How are they looking? And then we make staffing decisions and we make staffing adjustments. And then we analyze how is our adult ed enrollment as we start to flow into September, and how is our job target enrollment? And then we make those changes to staffing at that time. So really, it's a large process. Enrollment averaging helps significantly because we can have better financial planning, because we're not trying to financial plan in October when the numbers are locked in. We're financial planning for 7-8 months and looking ahead to the future years as well. So looking at their COSERs, again, we talked about the change in the revenue, the change in expenditures. This slightly different format than what you saw with special ed, but very similar, where we show the revenues coming in is really that top portion of it. Then we have the top part is the enrollment averaging. Again, you can see that's the biggest chunk of revenue coming in. Overall total of almost 7.5 million. And then those other items of revenue, New Vision Applied Engineering is kept separate for 3 years. Then that enrollment will be thrown into the enrollment averaging formula. So this is year 1. The next 2, you'll see it listed the same way: adult ed tuition, and then various other revenues that are coming in to date. And then below that, the equals line there, we do have the expenditures in the negative or the parentheses to show you what our expenditures to date, as well as encumbrances or our expected expenditures for the future. 101 is our Plattsburgh CV Tech, and that is Plattsburgh main campus CV Tech program. 104 is our satellite campus CV Tech program, and 102 is our Mineville CV Tech campus. I will highlight here, Mineville typically does run in a loss due to the size of our program down there. They take on similar expenses to the Plattsburgh campus that flow into their budgets, but really we have a smaller program down there, so enrollment is less, therefore we lose the ability to leverage and extrapolate upon large class sizes and tuition. So that is a typical thing that we do see, and we take it into account as we flow into our budgets every single year, and that's why we do look at them as a whole and how they flow together. Satellite campus is showing a significant surplus, and we are allocating more funds there because of our welding program, as Director Freeman said, is at max right now. So we have significant enrollment in our welding program, and that is part of our satellite campus budget. Where I want to highlight, and on our screen, I don't know if it's blurry, I'm going to try to reduce that there. So you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, we're showing, let's not go all the way to the bottom, but 116,228, middle of the page, bolded all the way to the right. That's if you take our coasters 101 through 116, add them together. Our surplus in CV Tech is looking at 116,000 at this point in time. Very, very good position to be in, very strong position to be in. Enrollment averaging dials us back a little bit less of concern with the pandemic. Right, we still plan to provide those services. Our enrollment average, the biggest chunk of our budget, is locked in. Very happy to be where we are. Very strong financial position as of today. We do reduce our upcoming expenditures. We're looking to add a teaching assistant in our welding program. Again, we said we're at max. We are working on providing support in that classroom right now, and temporarily we have been. We waited until this final budget reconciliation and to show it to this committee before we have moved on that. Dr. Davey just recently approved us to start going down that process. So we are budgeting that to come on board. And then we also have our Perkins grant. There was a 20% withholding similar to what our districts have seen in all of their grants and other grants. So we have a placeholder there. We haven't heard that the money's not going to come, but it hasn't yet. So we want to be conservative in our financial analysis with you. So we are backing that out just in case the money doesn't come. It has to be picked up by the CV Tech budget. So that's put in there again to be conservative. Adult ed, I'll talk about it a little bit, but at the end of the day, it shows a net surplus of $47,000. I will touch on, and we put a note in there at the bottom, PAI equipment sales, we have removed completely from the formula. So we don't want to show that as revenue coming in and then showing a large surplus there. So we have $1.5 million in sales, approximately $800,000 is going to the reserve, approximately $700,000 is being spent this year. So as we work through that spending and the equipment this year, we're not including in the analysis because we want to make sure that the board is understanding that we aren't spending that money to cover staffing or typical material and supplies. We're tracking completely separate, tracking a list of our big ticket equipment items that we've been planning for a long time and ticking off the list. That way they're not part of surplus and get lost. The next page, you'll see our adult program. Quickly running through this. This is where last year we presented to you, I think, a couple $100,000 loss at this point in time. Last year, we made significant changes trying to prevent that from being a deficit at year end. We got to in the mid $20,000 loss range. The pandemic prevented us from coming out of the hole. Director Freeman and team are working closely on this budget. Our position now for our adult ed is that at the year end, this cannot be negative. When you have a negative adult education year, it flows through the districts and it reduces their surplus. We'll talk surplus a little bit later, and it's very healthy. However, when they look at their numbers and they see 103 is negative, and they have to foot the bill for adult education, it doesn't go well. I will say that we had every single district sign on this year to support our adult education program and say they're willing to help and support it. And we need that as part of our requirements to run the program. It also says that they'll pick up any loss or any gain from it. So with that loss that we had last year and the year before, we now are working diligently to make sure that we can end this year with a surplus in our adult education. So this is a prime focus of ours right now in CV Tech. And then also the pandemic has an impact on this, and one that if the pandemic causes us to close or prevents us from running programs that we anticipate running, we are going to be monitoring these costs and making changes. And again, that's swiftly and fiscally prudent. So with that, Dr. Davey and Director Friedman, I will pass it to you.
Sure, and I'll just weigh in and say, we just had a date. Looking at the numbers, it's very, very positive compared to where we've been in many years in the past. The agita, or the nervousness, so to speak, of an October lock-in date was replaced a little bit with our student averaging for CTE of December 1st. So yesterday we locked in our numbers for enrollment averaging for this year, which is really exciting. So Mrs. Friedman, with your leadership, Mr. Bell's leadership, our superintendents that were supportive, and the board support, we were able to move that forward, and really it's become very beneficial. And I think it's caused our districts to view CTE with less restrictiveness. In other words, instead of they're looking at it more in the lens of what do our students need, and is this a good program to have our students be part of? So it has started to change the mindset a little bit, and I think that's noticeable. Mrs. Friedman, I have to give kudos to our satellite campus. I've never in 8 years heard you say our programs are full. You always would say, right?
Our programs are full and our satellite campus is not running in deficit.
Yeah.
Christine, don't you want to just cheer? No, it's really a godsend that we were able to make this shift to the model of enrollment averaging, obviously from a fiscal standpoint, but really from an access standpoint. We're seeing in the midst of a pandemic, when people were fearful to send students to school, and in general, we had a 30-seat increase in new students to CV Tech programs this year. So it speaks to how the enrollment averaging not only assists us in our fiscal prudency, but the expanded access that it has provided to students in Clinton and Essex counties. I am thrilled to see the satellite campus running in the black. I also know that the differential between the Mineville campus and the satellite campus, the Mineville campus looks worse than it really is. Trust me on that one. It's just the way it all kind of shakes out in the end with different pieces that we have to kind of share through the campuses. One other note in the 103, Eric, if you could go to the next page. This 103 is all of our adult classes. So when you saw 19 students, in 19 adult students, as opposed to the 45 budgeted adult students, that's in full daytime programs. Most of them are in welding. The majority of those students are in welding. But then we also have a cohort of 24 students in the LPN program. But because it's exclusively adults, it has to be run through the 103. You'll see the nurse assisting has absolutely no figures in there, and the other health only has some deficits. That's because we typically run 3 iterations of classes for nurse assisting and phlebotomy. We have not yet been able to run anything because we're not onboarding any students on the main campus for those programs. We're hopeful that in the spring we'll be able to at least run one, so that will generate some more revenue. We are in the process of purchasing a new CDL truck and trailer which we hope will kind of inject some more students into that program, which again will raise that revenue. And we're also working with some of our business and industry partners in our private business and industry training on CDLB licensing. So we have the opportunity to really generate some additional revenue in the business and industry side, and the AIM program runs through that as well. So I am confident that we will be able to negate that $15,000 projection of a deficit at this standpoint, and I'm really proud of the work that's been done. The December 1st deadline for lock-in is nerve-wracking. It's not as nerve-wracking as the October 1st, but this year in particular, because we did not know what our districts were going to do. We did not know if they were going to stay open and pull all their kids back before December 1st. So literally, I could not wait for the clock to strike midnight for December 1st to lock in those numbers, and they do look healthy. And I really want to thank Eric and Colby and Jess and all the folks and Christine over in management services for having such a thorough analysis ready for this meeting and throughout the last 4 months as we've been navigating this. So thank you so much.
Right. And I just want to weigh in, Mrs. Friedman, and give kudos, especially on our adult ed program. Even as late as yesterday and today, you and I have been discussing about the importance of our adult ed participation and ways to really advertise our program and all our CTE programs, but especially allied health and some of the partnerships that are starting to develop in terms of where there's support from local businesses, as well as filling a need. You look at the pandemic, you look at our health professionals, the LPN, and you mentioned today, Mrs. Friedman, I don't want to steal your thunder, but you even got Mrs. Tedford, our LPN and our allied health coordinator, received a call. Could you just weigh in for that a little bit? Because I think it's really indicative of what's happening in our region.
We really were in quite a quandary in the spring with our LPN cohort of last year, because when you move into March, you're getting ready for your full-on clinicals. They're getting ready, they're on their final push for the boards, and we weren't allowed in any healthcare facilities, obviously. So Mrs. Tedford is so insightful and so intuitive, and had worked with her colleagues around the state, and really took a risk and got us set up for virtual simulations for clinicals, and which are have ultimately then since been approved by the state as viable clinical hours to move through the program. So it was interesting today or yesterday, Mrs. Tedford received a call from the nursing program at SUNY Plattsburgh asking for assistance and wondering how we are actually doing our clinicals and what we're doing to make sure that we're still meeting the requirements for state licensure. So it was kind of nice to be one of the ones that were sought after instead of the ones that were searching for answers. And I know that Mrs. Tedford was really proud to take that phone call, as she should be. But we were really proud too. So a nice thing to share.
Right. Thank you for doing that. And Ms. Giro, from your background and understanding the need for high quality professionals, even at the entry level or to earn your way up, I think that's critical too. And we provide a great stepping stone for individuals to move into your setting where your profession is, and provide some of that basic support, and then even potentially have some other opportunities available as individuals prove their value to CVPH and other organizations. So
I think what we've been living through just proves that, how important these individuals are going to be to the system. I mean, I think it's going to just make us all appreciate, and we are appreciating people that are in the healthcare industry so much. And I think that's, so valuable in our community that we're able to sustain these programs that we do.
Thank you. And thank you, Mrs. Friedman, and kudos to our team. for the support.
Any other questions on our CV Tech portion? All right, we are jumping into our ISC coasters, as we like to call them. So Assistant Superintendent Gray and what we like, or I like to call 20 small businesses, or 20 real coasters that operate like a business in our Instructional Services Center. I'm going to touch on, again, the layout here is similar, slightly different. So again, you have base fees. We've talked about that a little bit last meeting. Those are what districts pay in order to get into the service. It's billed to them on a regular basis at a set fee. And then you also have our bill as used. And that's the big item here for these coasters. Districts choose to use them or not use them. They're not required to have a certain number of usage or a certain number of hours. It's based on their needs. And those needs are changing every day. We are in a different educational environment than we've ever been in before. That line there is our biggest fluctuation and where we continue to have to monitor and manage. Going down, you'll see a projected surplus line. And where there are figures, you're looking at deficits, so projected deficits. Below that, we do share with you what the budget for number of districts participating in the service were, and then what our actual number of districts are, or our current ones are at this time. Again, that is ever changing. We do have districts that request to join through the year as needs come up, depending on what's going on in their district. So the highlighted one under projected bill as used is our instructional printing, our print shop. We typically see revenues that will fulfill that bill as used. A large number of them, it happens throughout the year. A large number of the districts still used our services when they were closed during the pandemic. A good example there was absentee ballots and mailing ballots to taxpayers. Terry and team really stepped up, and not something to that level we had to do before, but really stepped up and provided. So again, that's one that we're projecting. We're going to see bill as used come in through the end of the year, but one that, again, it depends on district needs. Looking at our 506 coaster, again, the next one to the right, our school improvement coaster. You can see there we're down one district, and then we're down to 15. So down from our budget, so that causes an instant loss in revenue in our base fee, and then we're monitoring our bill as used services. A lot of this ties to training that's provided by ISC, and some of those items being billed by district. So at this current time, we're looking at a deficit, but it's one that Terry's managing and seeing services we can provide or cuts we can make in order to close that deficit. 508, library media, we are looking at a small deficit there, so I'm actually going to skip that one and go to 610 is where I want to head to. So on the bottom of your screen in the middle, scroll down slightly, I went the wrong way. So you can see there, this is our school public relations. You know, we do have certain hours that districts purchase. Districts have made a commitment to ISC and said they're going to purchase a number of hours. You can see that at the bottom is at 775. We did budget for 1,068 hours. We are projecting at this time actually that districts will pick up those hours. This point in time in the year, that's typical. It's what we normally see. So if districts' actions stay normal from December through June, then we're anticipating that we're going to close that gap. Also, CVS is using this service as part of our capital project. So our capital budget, a portion of that goes to this service in order to help us with our monthly updates that you see, as well as over the summer we had weekly updates. So we do work with this service in order to share our capital project work. Lastly, I will touch on the two new coasters that you see on here. 564 instructional technology, as well as 654 sub coordination. Those are two new coasters that Assistant Superintendent Gray was able to get off the ground this year during a pandemic. 564, I'll bring to your attention that we had planned for 2 districts. The team was working to service 2 districts. Such a good coaster, such a great program. fresh off the ground, brand new to our districts, and we were already up to 5. So the word's getting out there of this coaster, and the team's doing very well, and that has only grown and blossomed to a $500,000 projected budget at this point in time. And Terry and team are doing an awesome job there. But I do want to bring that to your attention and give kudos to the team. With that being said, I'll pass it to Dr. Davey and Assistant Superintendent Gray.
Sure. And I'm just going to weigh in very, very quickly and say, our instructional services, I think, is playing and not only as important a role as ever, but maybe even more so. Whether it's our communications, you look at what's been in the news locally here too, our interscholastic athletics. You think of all these different services, you look at our health, safety, risk, you look at our instructional service technology. And Terry, I don't want to steal your thunder, but the services that the instructional services division is providing is more valuable, I think, than ever, and becoming more so by the day. So yes, there's some areas that the numbers are a little bit less than what we're hoping for, but the services, and I think that the value add that's being given by our programs and our staff is critical, especially in today's time. So Terry, I'll let you weigh in, and then if there's any other final comments.
I would just like to say that, first of all, the division and all the people in it should be commended because they were so flexible. I will say that. They were able to adopt and adapt to meet the needs of our component districts as well as our organization. And also internally, people understood the need and we stepped up and said we can fill that role. So I just say we're doing business differently, but I think it's phenomenal. And I think we are going to do business differently post-pandemic because of the experiences we've had. So I think it's I always say this, instead of looking at a negative, I think it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to grow and expand. And we've been able to do that. I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for Jess and Christine for helping with the recons. We did do some homework. And so I know 505 and 610 are a little concerning when you look at the numbers. However, I looked back at last year's October, November billing, and then just in print shop, overall, we're down between the 2 months of billing around 24,000. In the 610, we're up almost 12,000. So really, overall, we're down around 11.5, 11.6. And actually, that's phenomenal when you think of it, because those two coasters work together. Because as you know, our communications team, several of those positions are mainly out of print shop, but then other pieces and other people are out of the 610. So really, they work hand in hand. So I'm pleased to see that based on everything that has happened. Most people would think, oh my God, we must be in very bad place. And I think people were pleasantly surprised. I think Christine was pleasantly surprised when we were running the numbers, and she was doing some homework before we met. So that's a good thing. We do know that their 506 is definitely going to be a concern because of the professional development, and it's just people can only do so much. People are overwhelmed. People are not comfortable coming to workshops in person, so we are having some virtual sessions. We do have some larger ones coming up, but they are virtual, and it's what districts have asked for. And we just continue to keep the lines of communication open to meet the needs of whoever comes to us. I will say kudos to Alex and the tech team for all the work they've been doing. We are looking at also expanding into the possibility. Eric has been working on this, and Mark have been getting answers from State Ed about getting some intermunicipal agreements in place for some of our services, which in the past that was not an option, but it has come to be an option. So we're going to investigate that and research it a little bit more. But that's good because other agencies are coming to us and saying, we want your help. And we're thinking maybe we can help them. So in the past, we've had to say no because nothing was allowed. The department did not allow for that. But they have opened those up over the past few years. So we'll see where that goes. And like I said, I just think everybody is working very hard to make it happen. I will say that in 506, just so you know, too, we reduced a position in there we did not fill. We've had a vacancy there, but we felt like if we're not having the workshops, we really can't justify a position. We do have a 20% position working out of there. So we were able to drop our budget like 192,000. If you looked on our worksheet, I don't think you have our specific worksheets, but we are limiting, we're not spending any money if we don't have any money, right? That's been my motto for people. And they understand that. And I just say, they know how it works. There's a lot of veteran staff in my division, which is good and maybe bad in 3 to 5 years. But it's great because they know how it works. They have those relationships with all the internal people, but also with our component districts. So I say, people come to us and we're going to say, we'll figure it out. And that's what we've been doing. And I just commend everybody for doing that.
Thank you. Any questions from our committee members? Moving on to our next item, and this is a new sheet for the committee. Typically, this is not something we discuss at this meeting. This is a heavy lift. Again, we try to improve every year, right, Christine? And she took on this challenge and actually, like typical Christine, went over the top, above and beyond, and created this for our analysis today, just to give the committee an update on how are we tracking with our COSERs listed as management services COSERs. So we have our admin budget, and this is laid out very similar to our ISC budgets, again, for simplicity here. Admin budget, our capital budget. I want to bring your attention that our capital budget is showing a surplus of $164,000. This year, we are operating a capital project for our water line and our exterior door replacement at CV Tech. That was part of last year's capital budget. As bids came in, we were over budget, so we had to steal or span 2 years is a better way to put it. So we spanned 2 years with that project. So we're absorbing some of this year's money, but not all of it. Also, it includes some temporary spacing that we've made some concessions, including our district superintendent who is at ISC. We've been able to incur significant savings. So to about $20,000 of that money is from not spending it on temporary spacing. So again, we're trying to do our best to be fiscally responsible and save where we can, including squeezing in where we may not fit, but we make it work for the short term. So that's where that money flows. New 602 budgets increase significantly this year because that includes the benefit coordination office. So that's tracking on budget. Our labor relations service 620 is brand new this year. That was one you can see with 0 districts budgeted, but that was one where Dr. Davey was found out about Cap Region Moses dropping the service at the end of June, might have been even the first week of July. So within the matter of a couple of weeks, we put together a service, and 4 districts, including and plus CBS, has joined that and is receiving great service for it. Lastly, well, not lastly, but 2 things. 642 school food management. There's a $25,000 miscellaneous revenue in there. That's from a grant from the Adirondack Foundation. Really, it's a Cloud Splitter Foundation. Gave a $50,000 grant, $25,000 for this year, $25,000 for next year. We put it on the analysis. It's going to be up to the board for review and approval next Wednesday. But that is a grant that they want to support the high quality meals that are being served through the Julie Holbrook program. And they want to make it financially affordable for our districts, and they want to see them stay in the service. So as an incentive, it will span to next year as well. So we'll have a credit to reduce rates as we're setting budget. So great news there in our 642 COSER. As you can see, the overall budget's about 127. So really that's about a 20% savings to our districts. Moving down, the last thing I want to talk about is we did include a breakdown of our capital projects that are ongoing. Again, we're living the life of 3 capital projects. So our fire alarm project, we call it, it's listed here as our utility system project. That's water line, which the water line portion of our project's done, and CV Tech classroom exterior doors. So we give you a breakdown there. There's a little bit left over of unexpended budget. Again, that's contingency funds, things that could come up. And then our large capital project, you can see the money there. We're expecting that money to get used up as we progress through the project. But again, for budget committee purposes, we wanted to show you and break it down even more and give you a complete and thorough update. Dr. Davey, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I would, Mr. Bell, just for a quick compliment and kudos. And I don't want to, we've given compliments every time, but they're only well deserved. I would not just give you, false accolades and say in each division you've heard, starting with our special ed and then our CP Tech and then instructional services, there's strong leadership by the cabinet members, tremendous leaders, and then a great team that supports it. You're seeing a similar piece here with this leadership as well. And you look at those areas, not only our capital budget, but our health insurance and workers' compensation coordination. That's a $90 million consortium that now has a surplus and a budget where there's money of almost $20 million that was put into reserves to support our health insurance and to really stabilize. Great decisions, good leadership, personnel recruiting, labor relations. You'll hear about this a little bit in the transmittal. Dr. Palmer has been supporting our districts and working with us. We're talking about laying the groundwork for that for next year. And in the last week, Boquet Valley just settled one of their major contracts with, I believe, their administrators. And so now they've settled their contracts with their teachers and their administrators for their newly merged district. Dr. Palmer was integral in making sure that happened. So the support and service that's happening, our school board, we're talking about that as well, the Gadsby, all the different aspects there. And I know, Mrs. Myers, you've been a strong supporter behind the scenes to make sure the finances are getting taken care of. But each one of these items, again, is providing support. It's providing important structure, and it's really helping us move forward successfully. So I think it's just worthy of acknowledging. And Mr. Bell, your leadership has really set the pace for all of this as well. So thank you and your team.
Any questions from the committee members? The next item up is a good news topic as well. I'm going to try to rotate this without losing the page. There we go. Is our surplus for last year. So this surplus is these amounts that flowed back to districts here this past month or last month. We want to show you a breakdown here. By district, you can see a significant change from year to year. Extremely good benefit that flowed through the districts. Again, in the last month, we had almost $4 million go back to our districts. Again, I'm assuming most of that is unplanned or unbudgeted for, but this is a reflection upon the steps taken by our organization to incur savings majority-wise through the pandemic. So as that pandemic hit, we clicked into immediate cost savings mode and doing everything we can to reduce our costs, minimize our costs. I mean, the day we closed was a Sunday. On Monday, the heat was down as low as it can go without freezing pipes. I mean, every inch and cranny where we could save money, we tried to do it. That helped to drive, surplus of 1.4 million. I will say that when we go into budget, and this committee's been integral part of setting budgets, we are setting tight budgets because we don't want to raise rates. We want to maintain, reasonable pricing for our programs. And the sacrifice there is that our surpluses weren't as big. There was history of $2.9–3 million surpluses. But as you start to set budgets with tighter rates to try to maintain that high level of programming, but maintain your pricing, what suffers is all this money flowing back to districts. So this year we're able to accomplish almost $1.4 million surplus. Very proud of that, very happy about it. But it's not something to be expected. And that's a big piece of this. Again, we don't know what this year is going to bring for us. But that's not something that's to be expected, and we do make our districts aware of that. And again, a lot of this is driven by what programs you're in, what services, what COSERs you are participating in to get the surplus back, because it depends on the COSER, and it's broken down by COSER. Each one has a surplus and it flows back to districts. Good example to look at would be Plattsburgh. Last year, $24,000 in surplus. 2 years ago. Last year's surplus was $214,000 in surplus. Significant difference for them. Again, what coaches they participate in that have surplus. Questions on our surplus? Moving on to budget development factors. So first item up, Dr. Davey, this is tied to the schedule and the timeline. So he touched on a lot of the topics for A, which is the economic update and potential stimulus outlook. It's a big item to watch. It really is, as Mark stressed, it's huge to monitor that, what happens with this stimulus package that is being discussed and how does that impact states and flow through to schools, because it could be detrimental to school districts and flowing through to the BOCES as well if stimulus funds do not come. And we've talked about 20% holdbacks, we've talked about 20% cuts. Those are significant to our districts, and that's something to monitor closely. I know, Dr. Dave, you want to touch on some of the financial situations of New York State, but I'm going to touch on quickly and then I'll pass it to you. Tax cap, where are we looking? Gave you an update last week on looking like below 2% growth factor. Update now, so that was August that I had given to you. Now, as of through October, we're looking at a 1.23% increase. So again, we're looking at a tax cap that will be well below the 2%. So that is one portion of the revenue for districts. The other major piece of revenue for districts is state aid. So half of their budgets for some of our districts, or even more or less, a portion of it, the tax levy is going to be below 2%. Now, another big piece is state aid. So with that, I'll pass it to Dr. Davey on the economic situation in New York. Sure. A couple items.
Sure. We've had ongoing conversations that we did last meeting as well, talking about the economic outlook for the state. Recently, I believe in the last 2 or 3 weeks, the comptroller came out with a snapshot and a report on where New York State's budget is and where the revenue is. Overall, the big picture, and I know they were predicting huge holes. Yes, there's a hole, but not as big as what was anticipated. Mr. Bell, I believe it was in the neighborhood of $4 billion.
Yeah.
Roughly. Mm-hmm. Where they had been projecting more like 8 or 10, I believe. So in other words, the revenue in New York State was not as bad as what they were projecting. Technically, the governor does have $4 to $5 billion in reserves that he could use. The problem with that is, like in a school district budget, if you use those reserves, they're gone. And the ability to recover those reserves is almost, impossible to try to redo again. And in the typical school budget, if you have a $500,000 hole and you don't fix the problem and you move reserves in that 1 year, the next year, that $500,000, you have to make up the $500,000 and then make it up a second time. So the next year, the hole's $1 million. The following year, that revenue again, same thing, it would be $2 million. And then so from 500,000 to $1 million to 2 million to 4 million to 8 million. If you don't fix the problem, it escalates. And I think that's the concern that the budget has. The state divisional budget has made it very clear. No expenses can be approved unless Mr. Majeka, who's actually the budget director, signs off on it. So literally, if there's a bill that's going to be paid, the budget director for the state has to approve it. And that's the type of close watching that the state is having. And they're saying the state has a cash flow problem. So they're very concerned about it. Yes, it's a big state. Yes, there's a lot of money involved. But still, when normally that revenue would be coming in, now it's much tighter and they're really watching the purse strings. We are coming up on a time traditionally. This is the time in the future when we would normally have Christmas bonuses on Wall Street. That generally, and fortunately, the stock market has been doing pretty well. We were talking about that today. Overall, the stock market has been doing okay, if not fairly well. So there is hope that some of that state income tax will come in and support the budget. So fingers crossed for that. So there are some factors that are a little bit more positive than what we were afraid, but still getting back to a normal budget, I think, is going to be crucial.
So excellent points, Dr. Davey, and I'm going to skip a little bit. And Kath is our advocacy update because it just timing-wise, this is a good time to do it. So what are we doing and how are we trying to address it? And Dr. Davis spearheaded an advocacy effort with all of our component districts, and we see value in pooling our resources. So when a district advocates, they typically talk about themselves and the impact on them. What Dr. Davies realized in team is that if we combine all of our 16 districts plus CVS, we are looking at a massive chunk of our North Country revenue generating, as well as the biggest employer group of anybody. So when you start to look at full-time employees, employment, and so on and so forth, we now, when we have an advocacy effort, we talk about CVS component districts, we're talking about the largest group in the North Country and hundreds of millions of dollars. So what we've done is we've actually done a survey of districts to start compiling all of this data. So all of our advocacy efforts this year will be backed by data, millions of dollars, tens of thousands of students, and then thousands and thousands of employees. And that's going to be our advocacy effort. So it's really a BOCES-led advocacy efforts that really are ongoing on a weekly basis, and discussions are had with legislative representatives from our DS office regularly, including meeting with them tomorrow even. So with that, anything else on the advocacy update, Dr. David, you want to give?
No, and the only thought too is with that, and as much as we're doing our best to advocate and our districts are being supportive of the larger scale advocacy, the problem is bigger than Assemblyman Steck and now Senator, Little moving to Senator Steck. Our local legislators are very powerful within their political arena themselves. However, even combined, all the state legislators don't have the clout, nor does the governor, to solve this big problem. So that's where we are relying on the work with the federal government to help as well. I was referring back to what we were talking about before. We can make a difference, and we are at the local level, and I think really advocating and working hard to provide the right support and services. But we need help because it's beyond our modus of control.
I wonder if they're going to let us back into the legislative office building this year. Last year, Dr. David did take the year of the Education Committee chairperson. So we did have great advocacy efforts in the building last year as well, and traveling to Albany. Be interested to see what that lobbying season looks like with this pandemic.
Make them come stand on the porch portico there and talk to us.
Yeah. Yep. So moving on to our health insurance consortium, this is always an extremely important topic, and it's one that escalated in previous years when we saw double-digit increases from year to year. We shared this document with you last month. I'm bringing it back just to share with you again. We're in a strong financial position. Dr. Davis touched on it. Money going into reserves, holding on to money. We have net income last year of almost $20 million. And then this year, we're already tracking at 5.7 million in net income. We are growing our financial strength every single month. It's been very positive. So what does that mean? As we go into rate setting, we're in a position where we have not been in the last 4 to 5 years, which is a position of financial strength. So very happy to be there as we go into rate setting. I will say that the rate setting process takes place over January and February. We rely on Siegel Consulting, the consultant for the consortium, to review our claims, medical claims, as well as prescription drug claims, review them, and then provide a projection for the upcoming year. The advisory committee reviews those projections, debates and discusses rate recommendations. Rate recommendations are made to the board. The board then meets typically the last week of February. Sometimes it flows into March. We'll meet the last week of February and then vote on what the rates for the new year will be. So as we build our budget, we will build health insurance rates on our guesses because we will not have set rates. Last year, we had the same thing. We built our budget on a guess. We did amend our budget after the board voted and made their determinations of the rates. we did go back and amend our budget and make changes to our budgets because of the unprecedented action by the board, which was to increase individual and family by, I believe, 5% or 5.5% actually, and Medicare was separated out and increased by 2.9%. So we did go back and change our budgets at that time. So again, we'll be progressing on assumptions. So you're going to start to see some of those assumptions on the next page. So really teeing up page 5C, number 1 is looking at our benefit portion of our budget and some assumptions that we're choosing. So to explain the spreadsheet, we show you our 1920 rates. Then we look at what we're budgeting for this current fiscal year. Those have been revised to be more accurate of how we are trending. And then next would be where we're projecting. So this projected column, projected 21, 22, again, are some of those assumptions that we are making. So TRS and ERS rates, that's teacher retirement and employee retirement, we talked about last month, and I gave you some exact numbers. Now we take those numbers and we apply it to what does that mean for CVES? And TRS is saying between 9.5 and 10. So with a range, we're going to have to go with the high. So we are budgeting at 10. ERS at 16.2, and we presented to you at 16.2. Christine's taken those numbers and actually we've dropped it into our actual salaries. And what happens is, and on page 5C, and I don't want to lose it on the screen, but 5C is a breakdown of where do our employees fall in tier 3, 4, 5, and 6, because those tiers have different rates. So for example, if you have a member in tier 3 or 4, we pay 18.3% of their salary. If we have a member in tier 5 or 6, tier 5, we're looking at 15.3%, tier 6, we're looking at 10.7%. So as we get more and more new employees on tier 6, we pay a lower percent for them. So we actually take our exact numbers and figure it out. We come up to 14.7. So realize that they don't run on school calendar, they run on state calendar. So this ends as of end of March. So we have new rates for April, May, and June. So we give a buffer there. We're at 15.5 is our estimate. So that's how we come in below 16.2%. Moving on down to the questions where you're probably wondering after my presentation of the health insurance is, what are you guys predicting for rate increases? That's a question we get all the time. So what I'm going to tell you is we are not predicting rate increasing. We are trying to budget and set budget early with a number that we are thinking is a educated choice. I am not predicting rate increases of 5%, but we are budgeting for it at this time. A lot of work is to be done. A lot of data will be analyzed and the board of directors will choose it. But right now we're going to set it at a 5% increase. We know trend is between 7 and 8% year to year. So we're saying with the strong financial position we're in, that will be, we will raise below trend. Could it be 0? It could be. Could it be 3? It could be. Could it be 5, 6, 7, or 8? Yeah, it could be, because the board of directors has ultimate power on what they change that at. So we will start here. We're going to start at 5. As we get more data and analysis leading up to that February 10th meeting, we'll amend. So realize at the end of the day, what we're looking at, scrolling the wrong way, bottom line, potential net increase just on the benefits portion of our budget, we're looking at $431,000. So again, as we go across all those coasters you just saw, the 100 coasters that we have, that impact will be spread across all of those coasters.
And Mr. Bell, the only point I would just weigh in as I'm looking at the fringe benefits, I just want to acknowledge how, as a school and our school districts really have a well-supported health insurance plan. So it is one of the best benefits that our staffs have. And everyone may not always appreciate all the value that brings, but it is a platinum level plan. And the fact that, we're able to provide that, and we have for so many years, is really fortunate. And we realize that the value that it brings to our employees and their support too. It is traditionally one of the biggest areas where there's an expense, but it's a well-earned and well-received benefit as well.
Great points, Dr. Davian, to that. And our Plan 1 costs you can see here, just as a hedge a little bit, those are all in our admin budget because we know they're retirees. For next year's budget, every single person on Plan 1 will be in our admin budget for next year's budget. So that cost increase right there is right on our admin budget. We do have some in Plan 2 that is part of our admin budget, but you can see the increase right there. A lot of it will be as part of our retiree costs in our admin budget. All right, I'm going to skip through the next two. I kind of touched on them. They were really supporting that previous slide. If you had questions on it, I'm happy to dive into more detail. Do not hesitate to ask. So as part of our budget development factors update, we want to give you an update on what is the change in our WADA from year to year. Our WADA drives some of our COSER charge outs. We do see it throughout our COSERs and managed services as well as ISC. Our WADA is used as a way of charging costs off. And then the biggest budget driven for our WADA is admin, the admin budget. So we always want to monitor this. What are our changes? So overall net change in our WADA, I want to dial it back actually quickly. Our WADA resident weighted average daily attendance, that is driven by what's reported by school districts to state ed on their ST3's Form A due September 1. They report the data, it's automatically calculated. It's based on their student in attendance, and some students are weighted heavier than others and count more towards enrollment, towards that calculation. So this is not enrollment. Again, it's a weighted average attendance of students. All right, with that being said, there are two highlights here. I'm going to throw a third on there. So Putnam and Ty, we have been informed that SED is not finalizing those numbers. There could be issues in items that they are looking into right now. They have questions on that. We did see Plattsburgh City increase 132 students. That is very atypical. That's a huge increase from year to year for a district. It also meant a massive swing in how our WADA is charged out. You can see they're jumping up to 14% of the budget. We did reach out to their superintendent, had a conversation with him and said, this looks like an error. They looked into it and it is. So they are working with SED now to amend that. So they are very thankful that we did reach out and they are working on it. There was a data entry issue on their Form A with SED. So I'm expecting those three now are highlighted. More to shake out here, early analysis to show you net loss of 13. I would assume Plattsburgh number is going to come down. How much, I don't know. Not sure where Ty and Putnam are going to end up. I'm expecting that to be a bigger decrease than 13, which means that districts that had an increase, it's exponential, the change. So a district like Shazy with 32 increase, they picked up a bigger portion of our budget. They increased, everybody else is decreasing. So again, it's exponential, that change. So bringing that to your attention early on in the process. Next meeting, we will give you an updated one. Hopefully we can shake out Plattsburgh, Putnam, and Ty and get some more final numbers. Any questions on our WADA? So that is my last slide up there on the screen. So I'm going to stop sharing. And the next item is really budget development factors. Let me get to stop sharing, and I'll pass it to Dr. Davey in a little bit. But I'll say we touched on this throughout, and we like to discuss this with the committee to say, where do we want to go from here as the team is working on setting budgets, and we're looking at year-to-year changes. We know we have cost changes. We know where our negotiations are at. We know our salary increases. We just showed you what potential health insurance increases are. We showed you ERS increase could be slight savings in TRS. So with all that taken into consideration, we know we're going to have increased costs for next year. So as we start to build our budgets in our divisions and our individual coasters, because we look at every single one of them, we talk about what are our parameters. So my expectation will be we're going to have to be very conservative in any changes or increases. What those parameters look like and all that will be discussed with this group as we start to look at individual budgets. But it's very important to know, usually Dr. Davies sets this table for our teams and really guides us to say, these are your parameters. Michelle, Matt, Terry, Eric, Christine, we need to make this work. We need to make these changes, and we try to work underneath those parameters. So with that being said, I'll pass it to Dr. Davies.
Yeah, no, I think I just want to thank everyone, not only our board members for being part of the conversation tonight, turn it over to see if there are any other questions you have, but also acknowledge our team members who were a big part of pulling all this information together. There's a lot of analysis that's gone into it and a lot of introspective consideration about trends and saying what could happen, where have we been in the past? Let's compare where we were the last few years at this time to look at where we are now and then use that as a forecast model. So the numbers and the outlooks that are being shared were not developed randomly. They were done with a lot of foresight and thought. And I just want to thank our team members for all your work. Mrs. Myers, I know you're one of the driving forces that pulls all this together, and you sit down with Mr. Bell and our team and all the leaders to make sure that the numbers are accurate, that they reflect what's happening. And I just want to thank you and everyone for being part of this important review. So does the board have, Ms. Giro or Ms. Saunders, do you have any questions at all?
I don't have any questions. As usual, the team did an excellent job of explaining and helping to understand. And we just get better at it every year. I think every last person on the team has done an amazing job. I've been around long enough that I remember the year we let 140 aides go. That was disastrous. And then the following year, it was Michelle's turn. And it was like, oh my gosh, now what? We just kept her fed with hot cocoa and cookies. And then it was special education's turn. I mean, everybody seems to get a turn. But every time they pull it out. And I'm dyslexic and I understand this. Did I tell you how good you guys do?
I have to just agree with Mrs. Saunders' comments as well. I think you guys have all done an incredible job, and bringing it to a level to the point where we can understand it is just kudos to all of you. I really appreciate that.
Well, and thank you for taking the time. In terms of our board presentation, we generally will do an overview at the board meeting. But Ms. Giro and Ms. Saunders, if you'd be willing to weigh in or add any feedback that you have, after having sat through this, you've got a lot of information and a lot of details, and you shouldn't need to get into the weeds. But on the other hand, the ability that you've taken the time to do a deeper dive is really important because you're representing the full board. Mm-hmm. And so
I honestly thought it was going to be much worse with the whole, for what we've gone through this year with the budget constraints. And I just think that I was very impressed on how well the school is doing, actually.
And I think that would be a great insight to share as well. Mm-hmm. As you talk about, and you consider the review and where we are and what the outlook looks like. Right. So that's important.
I have a very large social group now, and a lot of them in this social group are the homeschoolers of your students, maybe with one or two fussing. I won't even say complaints, fussing. They think that the BOCES, CVES, CV Tech, have done better than anything that they've ever seen. And some of these people are older than me doing the homeschooling. And the only thing I will tell you is that I'm sorry to say it, but Common Core math is dead. Because none of us know how to do it, and we're the ones teaching our children the math. So they've all learned to carry the one. Terry, that's up to you to tell state ed that.
Now, regrouping is good. Just saying.
Is that a math term, Terry?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Regrouping.
Did anybody get it?
Regrouping, I would just say thank you to the committee members and our team as well. Our next meeting on January 26th, the blood, sweat, and tears, I guess we could say, is going to be shaken out over the next 2 months as we build budgets for the new year. It will be a challenge from the team. I look forward to doing it with our group that we have. We have a very strong team here, a great team on the line right now that are very fiscally responsible people. And the way we'll find a way to put forth a strong rate for our districts because we know our services are amazing and needed by our district. So not to sound egotistical or arrogant, but they truly are, like Ms. Saunders said, just great services and maybe performing at the highest level right now. So on January 26th, be prepared. We're going to dive into some new budgets. We're going to be throwing a lot of things at you, again, like the dive that it was today. And over the next 2 months, it will be a heavy budget time and struggle, but we're looking forward to presenting those new budgets to you.
Yeah, and I know, Ms. Myers, you normally like to be here, but not be to it. Mr. Bell, is there anything as you've pulled this all together and helped us pull it together in the big picture and the details? Would you want to add any final comments to help close this out?
I think everything has been said. Everybody's done a great job, and it's been a surprise. It's been nice to have a surprising year and have things work out the way they have. So I really don't have anything else to add.
Okay.
Thank you for all your hard work, Christine, really. You make us look good.
A big team effort, especially in times like this. So it's been very impressive to work with everybody. So thanks to everybody for everybody's help.
So great job.
Nice to see you, Christine. I haven't seen you in like months. Like haven't seen
They
you.
just had me locked up in the attic.
Where are you? That's what I want to know. Where are you?
Place where the sun never sets and the trees stay green.
I love it.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Excellent budget committee meeting, and look forward to seeing everybody next Wednesday at our board meeting.
Awesome.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks. Good night, everyone.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Nice job, everybody.
Thank you.